So, Emidio, you're a product manager at Converge. How the hell does someone become a product manager? What even is that?
Well, from my experience, it is kind of an interesting career path to get into. I had an interesting 2-year journey to get into the current role that I'm in, which is my first startup product manager role. I would say you get into it by many different ways. But if you want to be a product manager, at least in the construction space, from what I've seen, is you have to be a problem solver. You have to be able to take really direct feedback and negative feedback from customers. And you have to be able to just go back to the first rule, which is solve problems over and over and over. Technical, human, stuff that goes on a construction site, at a factory. Every day is different, and every day is strictly speaking about solving problems.
Maybe you could give people advice about how, because I do know from my own knowledge and reading stuff on the internet and whatnot that people from construction who are looking for a career in tech, product manager is a totally viable role because you have the domain expertise. So Emidio, if you could share your journey into product management, and then maybe we can provide a bit more of a general answer as to people who might be interested and how they can go about doing that.
Yeah, sure. And this is actually one of the things I was happy to share today. I was hoping we'd share today because I do think it's a career path that more people should know about. It's not a simple one to make the transition. And like I said before, it took me 2 years.
What is a couple product management hacks or maybe harsh lessons that you've learned over the few years?
Here's a thing I will tell you. If you want, like I told you before, you've got to be able to take the gut punches. And in construction tech product management in particular, I've always said this. I lived in Hong Kong for 10 years nearly. There is no better person to test your ideas with than a Chinese contractor. A Chinese contractor will absolutely whale you with feedback in the face and tell you direct and negative feedback. He's not going to be worried about your feelings, right?
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Bricks and Bytes podcast, where we dive into construction and AEC technology. Before we get started though, if you're a startup founder or operator responsible for innovation in your company, or you want a deeper, more insightful look into technology in AEC, you won't want to miss our newsletter. From deep dives into particular technologies such as AI, robotics, design, software, and so on. Hot takes from investors betting big in AEC technology and advice on building tech companies, including the stories and takeaways of the most successful AEC technology founders. Head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today to get this exclusive material straight to your inbox. And now for the episode.
This episode is brought to you by Build Vision, transforming construction supply chain by bringing contractors, manufacturers, and stakeholders onto a single software platform. Visit buildvision.io to find out more.
Good afternoon, Emidio.
Hey, mate. How are you?
So look, we chatted and we said that we're going to dive straight on into this one. So Emidio, you're a product manager at Converge. How the hell does someone become a product manager? What even is that?
Well, from my experience, it is kind of an interesting career path to get into. I had an interesting 2-year journey to get into the current role that I'm in, which is my first startup product manager role. I would say you get into it by many different ways. But if you want to be a product manager, at least in the construction space, from what I've seen, is you have to be a problem solver. You have to be able to take really direct feedback and negative feedback from customers. And you have to be able to just go back to the first rule, which is solve problems over and over and over. Technical, human, stuff that goes on a construction site, at a factory. Every day is different, and every day is strictly speaking about solving problems.
Are you actually building the products? Like what are you doing?
So, I work in the hardware space and the software space, which is a super wicked problem because, again, you have the human side of things, both the internal colleague side, the customer side, but also you have little gizmos and gadgets like this. My house is covered with there's a whole box of fools over here and gizmos and gadgets. printed circuit boards. You have to be able to get hands-on, glue stuff together, mash it together, and hope for the best, bring it out in situ and use it. When you have a product which has a very physical thing, and that helps because I can hold it up and go, hey, look, this is part of my product. There's a software side, of course, but when push comes to shove, a lot of what we do, and a lot of what's all over my house is, stuff that
These little
actually
gizmos.
is gizmos. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're kind of bridging the gap between the people that are actually like doing the technical building of the hardware, perhaps not just piecing it together, like actually building it, and the software, and the customer that's actually going to use it. So you're kind of like translating between the two. The customer wants this, guys go build this, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I would say 100%. I think it's the classical definition of you're kind of a jack of all trades in between the technical and the business world. My background is very much in the technical world, and I've been brought slowly but surely into the commercial world. And in one day, I could be on a call in the morning with a C-suite director of a HS2 project, trying to understand and pull out of them the commercial value of what they're looking to get, and then be on a call with a data scientist, PhD in mathematics, trying to translate that into the math side of things, which, you have to, in order for you to communicate with that person, it helps to be having an engineering degree, right? Because it's math. You have to talk the language of math 1 second and the language of finance in another.
Yeah, I can imagine that that's quite a skill that's a little bit more difficult than it perhaps sounds, because on one side of the fence, you've got like a guy, and I'm sure we'll get onto this later, but working in like a dusty precast concrete panel factory. And then the other end, you got a guy with nice soft hands, keying code into a computer, like probably, it's like completely two different ends of the spectrum, right?
And I would say it's normally, I talk to people about the 4 different personas that are going to be part of any adoption of our technology. So I'd say it's 4 human beings. All of them have completely different drivers. They're completely different personalities. And yeah, definitely like some of them are super like, they get it right away. Like they might be a millennial senior engineer, like super cool. They're super passionate about it. The other one might be a hard-nosed commercial director who's like, you got to show me on paper a 10x return on investment because digital doesn't give good return on investment in construction. And they might be a bit older. They might have had some bad experiences with tech. So you're going to have to deal with all of those people simultaneously to have a successful product.
Yeah, it's a part of the role, sales.
Definitely, especially when you're, for us, the product that I am involved with, my company right now is kind of a new product. So you're going from the sort of 0 to 1, like Peter Thiel had said, product-wise, you're going from nothing to something. And at that inception point, there really isn't. If you're trying to make it such that you do sales, you do algorithms, you do engineering, that's the wrong approach. Everybody does everything, especially the PM. So I'm involved in sales discussions, not trying to be a salesman necessarily, but also trying to support salesmen because salesmen and women, because they don't really know what the product is yet. The product doesn't exist yet, right? So it's like, it's this Schrodinger paradigm where it's like it exists, but it doesn't exist. We have to sell it, we have to build it at the same time to know we're building the right thing.
So do you have like a criteria to say, okay, I feel like I have enough yeses or whatever to now go and build this thing? Do you is it like gut feeling? Is it experience? Like how do you know it's worth going to spend like however much money to build?
It's a good question. And I would say there's an art and science to it. There's definitely a gut feel aspect to things. So there's definitely like an ability with me. I've been in the industry for 15 years. When you want to go and suss out what the real, true distilled value is in this conversation, to be able to kind of know the answer ahead of time, but then just pull it out and know which path to go down, it's important. But then there's also hard signals, which is, people who are willing to part ways with their money is a huge signal. Any amount of money, you pay me £500 for a trial, I'm starting to realize that you have real interest, right? If you say, come out and do a trial for free, that's a pitfall because you're no skin in this game. I can do it. It's better than no signals at all. Some people have to start somewhere, but there's definitely some qualitative signals and some qualitative things you could do and some quantitative things you can do to kind of know you're heading in the right direction. One of the key things I think, especially at the beginning, is keep it simple. small build, measure, learn cycles is the key, especially when you're dealing with complex industry like construction and complex implementation on site and modular construction facilities. If you try and boil the ocean, you will fall flat on your face very quickly.
So by small, you mean like the smallest possible experiment that you can undertake in order to get a good level of validation to then go and expend more resource and developing that thing to then go and produce for your customer.
Hey listeners, I want to take a quick break to remind you about the Bricks and Bytes newsletter. If you're interested in learning about the technology shaping the future of construction, you won't want to miss the valuable insights we share each week. To get this exclusive content delivered straight to your inbox, head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today. Link is in the show notes. Back to the show.
That's it. Predefined success criteria, trying to keep it as small as possible. Today, we're going to come out there and we're going to try and achieve implementing this new firmware on the hardware, run these very simple tests, walk away with this data to validate, did we move forward towards this outcome, right? And that's just a very simple example. You go out there and say, I want to change the hardware, change the firmware, change the software, change the way you guys work all at once. No, never going to work. You have to do it iteratively and a build, measure, learn cycle over and over, small steps at a time.
Maybe we'll get onto frameworks a bit later. I would be very interested to hear how it actually works in practice. But I think what would be cool to hear from our audience. And by the way, when people hear the word PM, because you have a construction audience, I think their mind will automatically go to project manager. So if we use PM in this podcast, it's because it means product manager for the benefit of everyone here.
See, I'm fully converted to the startup world now.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be like some kind of a legal case like there was with the word architect and who can actually use that term. You can't use it if you're not registered by the ARB. In certain circumstances. Yeah. There's all sorts of debate about it. Anyway, let's talk about your journey into product management then. So maybe you could give people advice about how, because I do know from my own knowledge and reading stuff on the internet and whatnot that people from construction who are looking for a career in tech, product manager is a totally viable role because you have the domain expertise. So Emidio, if you could share your journey into product management, and then maybe we can like provide a bit more of a general answer as to people who might be interested and how they can go about doing that.
Yeah, sure. And this is actually one of the things I was happy to share today. I was hoping we'd share today because I do think it's a career path that more people should know about. It's not a simple one to make the transition. And like I said before, it took me 2 years. So just given the full journey is just so everybody knows, like I am through and through, have been educated in structural engineering. I have spent my entire career in different parts of the construction supply chain, pretty much every end-to-end part of the supply chain. I graduated civil structural engineer from MIT. I was working during my studies in the United States for a small contractor in Ohio called Summit Construction. I also worked for what is now one of the biggest engineering consultancies in the world, Cadis. And then I left the United States. I joined the UK engineering consultancy called Bureau Happold, one of the leading consultancies in the world. I was with them for about 10 years between Dubai, Hong Kong, and their London offices, and working on some really amazing projects with them. And, so I come from construction, all different parts of real, like not context. Now, the way I made the transition was when I worked for Bureau Happold for the better part of 10 years, it definitely was like I started off as a individual contributor, just like everybody does. And you're just a graduate engineer. And my specialty was, at the time, you called it parametric design. Now they call it different things, digital engineering, computational engineering. Like I knew how to code and I knew how to do engineering. And that was particularly valuable in a place like Hong Kong, where at that time they were doing some just crazy complex projects. And that kind of skill was needed. So I always knew I liked tech because of that. I could see the effect it could have on construction. But in this industry, you start to go up the food chain a little bit and you get pushed more and more away from technical work and more towards managerial work. Might be a hot take, but I don't think there's many career paths that take you up the ladder that are just technical meritocracy, right? You have to start being a manager. You have to start being a work winner.
Mm.
So as the powers that be forced me down that managerial path, I always tried to force the the computer technical aspect as well, keeping coding part of it. So next chapter turned into I was trying to expand the knowledge of computational techniques in Bureau Apple, right? Trying to make it not just about me using it, but everybody else, digital transformation type of stuff, right? But really, I was still just delivering projects, right? And then the last chapter was really was like, okay, you want me to win work, but I want to win work that is digital. So I started and founded with a partner in Hong Kong, sort of our own digital consultancy offering. We built a team of 3 people over the course of 2 years. The team still exists today. It's still going. And that was towards the end of that journey, I started to realize if you want to do tech, it's time to start doing tech. So that was the thing is that, like I said, I think the momentum of the industry, the way it works is it's about delivering projects. It's about delivering a drawing set on a deadline. It's not about tech. If you want to do tech, you can do it, but it's the minority of your time, not the majority. You're sat in meetings the majority of the time. You're answering emails. You're very rarely actually, if you're a technical person, you're very rarely actually doing calculations. So I decided to leave in about 2020.
Yeah. So did you find that working for these big companies was way too rigid? Why did they not want to do technology? Was it just because of the nature of the industry?
I would say, first of all, I mean, I was very fortunate to be at a sort of a forefront company like BH, where they do give you a bit of leeway. But, most companies are pretty rigid, and most companies are pretty rigid because this is an industry where everybody's playing by the same rules to a certain degree. Everything looks a little bit different, but everybody has 3 things that they have to do: win work, do the work, get paid for the work. My old boss, Richard, would go on about this over and over and over. And if you're not winning work, you're not doing the work and you're not getting paid. So the biggest driver is to win the work. You have to be working on bids because otherwise you're not going to have any work to do tomorrow. But the doing of the work is one of those things that's like, I don't know, I don't care. There's the Deng Xiaoping quote. I don't care if the cat is gray or if it's black. I just care that it catches mice, right? Look, doing of the work, yeah, whatever, we'll throw graduates at the problem. That's a very prevalent attitude in this industry. And that digital has to come across, which is if I come and say, look, there's a better way of doing something, but you're used to just working off the premise that I could hire cheap graduate engineers, make them work free overtime to get the same tasks done in the same amount of time. So you give them 2 projects instead of 1. Very hard for digital to thrive in that environment. So when really the main focus is on, and the main people, the main focus, I say the main incentivization, the main way you climb the corporate ladder is by winning projects, by being involved in bids, and then kind of making a whole song and dance about how you won a bid, you yourself, taking credit for the win. It's a very measurable data point, right? It's very measurable to say, I won this tender. It's very difficult to measure, I delivered this project, and the project was successful because of XYZ that I did on the delivery. And digital is very much about the delivery. So, the further down that I get work, deliver work, get paid for work, you go temporally, the harder it is for someone to stand out. And if you're trying to do digital, you're further down that supply chain. It just gets lost in these big companies. There's nothing wrong about that, but that's just the nature of the game that they're playing. It's how the business is structured.
Yeah, people are not really incentivized necessarily to be more efficient, right? It's just like you say, win the work, do the work, get paid.
That's it. And when you say, I mean, one of the biggest takeaways, making the transition from someone who was a technical, kind of leader, to someone who's trying to be like a business leader. So it still hurts me to say it, but like, look, no one cares about your time. Like if you try and pitch, hey, look, I'm going to save this graduate engineer's time. You say efficiency. What it really means is do more in the same amount of time. Save them time is sometimes how people frame that. No one cares about it. These managers in this industry, you talk to them, you could already see their cogs moving. They take it as a constant of the universe that I will throw 3 projects or 2 projects or 5 projects at the graduate and they will get it done. Come hook or by crook. because they have a degree. That degree is useless until they put in a few years of time with me. So I have them for the next 2-3 years. They will do what it takes to build their resume so they can start to make a career in this industry. And going back to your original question, that's why Contech is such a game changer, because that's a fallacy that needs to stop. That's something that I think is hurting us as an industry. But when you open up this new venue for smart people and entrepreneurial people called Contech, and it's like, bye-bye, I'm not going to play that game. That starts to eventually eradicate, I think, that false thinking.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are thinking about that. But I do think as the generation changes and as people start to see the benefits of using this technology, their attitude will slowly start to change. But even me now, day to day, and in the work that I do in construction, I don't really see any swanky innovation, and people are not motivated to do it. They just want the outcome.
And that's, I couldn't have said it better myself. At the end of the day, one of the things we talked about in the meetup group that I co-host, Tech Built World, one of our first session was about, look, everybody knows fintech. Nobody knows Contech, because we haven't done anything that fundamentally changes the world. If anything, the way that Contech has manifested itself, let's not say Contech, digital tech in AEC, it is mediocre ROI to none. And at worst case scenario, it's manifested as it's been a distraction and a waste of money in its way it's implemented. The digital fatigue that people have with all the different things that they've been pitched over the last 10, 20 years, like the lack of real, true transformative benefit they've seen, really weighs on, product manager like me. You have to have that empathy that you're trying to show someone the 20th thing they've seen this year. You're trying to pitch them on something, and their initial gut feel is going to be not again.
Yeah.
Not another thing,
So what? I will continue down the route of your journey, because I will get to Converge and how that all came about. But what technology therefore excites you? What do you think can really make a difference in the industry?
For me, I mean, it's directly linked to my transition we were talking about earlier to product management. It is, hardware, hardware, physical solutions for physical problems is sort of my new mantra. I've worked in the physical industry my entire life, and very rarely was I actually making things with my hands, right? I was making a slide deck. I was making a model. It was all on a computer screen. But now, I've seen that, there are these IoT, Internet of Things devices, computer vision, things that you can actually do in the real world that act as the interface between the real world, the real physical world, and the digital world without the need for people clicking and clacking on a keyboard.
So that could be like the hardware sensors you're building. How about robotics?
Robotics is huge. I mean, excuse me, there was in London, maybe a week and a half ago, a really good robotics get together. They had 4 different lectures from people from UCL, from the funding side of things, different startups. This
Construction
is
focus?
No, just like robotics focused. No one from construction there. Maybe next time. But med tech people, right? People who are making these machines that are actually trying to optimize medicine research, not even production, research, because there's only a very few amount of scientists out there who can do that research, and that's the precursor to real medicines coming into the world. And what was interesting as a construction person being in that room, it sounds very much like we're not the only people who do things via inefficient methods, like just where you're titrating manually, using Excel sheets to keep track of really complex things, So, when there's a physical aspect of a product now, I get super excited, because I really truly believe that for you to really have a transformative impact on physical problems, we live in the physical world where there are a lot of problems. You can only do so much with just software.
Agreed. Okay, so you started you come into the end of your time. This was at Bureau Happold or Arcadis?
At Bureau Happold.
Bureau Happold. And you're obviously one day you was like, fuck this, I'm leaving, I'm going to join Converge. Like, what happened around that time?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like a day. I would say the journey that I took from 2020 to 2022. I remember those dates because it started with I graduated from MIT in 2013. They have a tremendous alumni networking system. And one of the things they offer is like a career counseling, let's say, cohort every year. So I joined that, and it's a bunch of people who are all like at different stages of their career, just out of college, almost close to retirement. And everybody kind of, it's like a therapy session. Like everybody kind of says, this is the problems I'm having in my career. And everybody else gives them back advice of what they could do. It was
Wow.
super impactful.
That sounds awesome.
Oh, it was so, and the thing is, everybody thinks they have problems, but then when you hear other people say their problems, you kind of feel like I don't have it so bad, right? So
To
it
be
was,
fair, I think if you're not questioning your career like fairly regularly, then I think some people are quite happy where they're set, but me certainly, I almost question it daily. So,
and that is healthy, and I'm very fortunate because, like I said, I was with Bureau for 10 years, and I would say for the vast majority of that time, I'm very fortunate person because I chose structural engineering when I was in high school, and I actually did very well in it for a long time, over a decade, and I never thought twice about it. But at some point, I got to the point where I was like, this is starting to hit the point of diminishing returns. I can see that this road is going to be the next 20 years of my life dedicated towards playing politics. It's not going to be about technical stuff. It's not going to be about solving problems. It's going to be more about politics, let's say. So let's make a change. I did that cohort, and someone told me, I think if you want to move into tech, you should be a product manager. And that's the first time I ever heard of the name. Started reading books on it, started doing research, started doing interviews for it, and ultimately got to Converge because of the one key hack I will share with your audience. If you're looking to make this transition,
love hacks.
You gotta don't call someone up and ask for a job. Call someone up and ask for advice who's done the transition. So I can only take somebody help. If somebody watching this and they want to reach out to me, I know you've had other people on who've offered it as part of their LinkedIn page. The advice is I called up my ex-colleague, Selena, who had made the transition to Contact, who was at Converge. I only asked her, look, can you give me some advice? And it just so happened in that conversation that I mentioned, I was doing stuff in the logistics computational space. She linked that up to something that Converge was about to do with a new product they had coming up. We made an introduction, and it was a good match right off the bat. We clicked, and that's how I ended up at Converge. It wasn't because I did a job application. It was because I was curious about how to become a PM, and I finally found someone who was kind enough, shout out to Selena, who could get me into an interview that I actually had a chance of success in. Because if you're trying to become PM, one of the hardest things you're going to be finding, especially if you're an experienced professional, is, in my opinion, I had many interviews where I got to the founder stage, and that sticky questions can come up where they say, have you ever done product management before in a startup? So it's like this catch-22. You can't do it until you've done it, but someone's got to take a risk on you to do it that first time. And to get over that chicken and egg scenario, you'll need help. And that's how I did it, at least.
Yeah, so I guess you need to sort of be prepared to go through a number of interviews, try different ways of getting in touch with prospective employers. I love when I read about these people that have like creative ways of getting the dream job, like standing outside of a tube station with a big sign saying, I've just graduated with a degree in economics and no one wants to employ me.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it takes, I think, is, come to Tech Built World Meetup, that type of thing. Put yourself in a position where you're going to be able to bump elbows and learn from people. Because, I mean, it is what it is. You have to learn, product management is something that you have to learn about it. I read a lot of books on it. And that learning sessions actually really helps once you start acting day to day as a product manager, reading about those things, but then putting them into practice, and solving problems, like just getting out there and saying, look, this is just, at its core, it's about solving.
Curious, Emidio, and this, you don't have to answer it in a personal way at all, but do you expect that people will, if they've got a high-flying career in construction, are they going to have to take a pay cut to go into a product management role?
I was prepared to do so. I don't know what the data would say is if that's statistically going to be something that happens to you. But I do think that you have to look at it as, how should I put it? What do you want to gain, right? So with your job, the way I see it is it's an alliance, right? And it's a way to earn money. It's a way to earn experience as predominant things that you earn. And I would say money-wise, the difference between a startup and someone in regular construction is you join a small-time company, day one, you're going to have a chance at equity, a bona fide path at equity. That's how that's how they can't pay you as much potentially, but they can give you a skin in the game. If you want to stay in regular construction, then you are going to get years, decades before you have that chance of equity. We all know that that's a key thing to building some real wealth on the fiscal side of things.
Mm-hmm.
But then you look at your experience portfolio, and this one's really where you have to ask yourself the question: what experiences am I trying to build up in my career? And again, if you're a technical and entrepreneurial-minded individual in a bona fide regular AC company, I personally think and have experienced that you will be continually pushed down. Your experience portfolio will be about, business development, management, politics, right? It will be a lot more and more about that. If you want to be technical, that's not a great place for you to be.
Understood.
That doesn't mean you can have a great career and make a good living, but if you really have that bug in your hat, and if you'll know if you have it, that you want to code as part of your job as a structural engineer, MEP engineer, or whatever, you're going to find that less and less that's a possibility as part of your day-to-day.
So how many interviews did you want to take before coming and landing a job with Converge?
Some people who've been on your show have interviewed me. So I would say I did 3. So it was 2 years transition. It was 4 concluding Converge. Failed 3 times. And again, that's part of product management, I would say, is you got to learn how to fail and have someone metaphorically punch you in the gut. Like you can't be so emotionally attached to this. So that because someone's going to come up to you in a contractor world, he's going to say, there's no value in that. And if you can't roll with that punch, you're not going to last very long. So when someone comes to you and says, unfortunately, we decided not to proceed with your application. You really were good in this interviews, but we really want someone who has done this before. You have to take them on the chin. You have to ask for feedback. You have to ask for I can't change that. I can't change. I haven't done it, but what would you suggest I do next so that I build my skills, because I'm committed to this career path.
Yeah, so that sounds like not having the previous experience working at a startup is like probably the biggest blocker to people coming from the industry. Yeah,
in my experience, because if you're some of these businesses, that's a nice thing to have, because one of the key things, like having been there now, big thing is it's culture fit. And that's one thing where I'm at right now is they have hired some people who are all the same excellent typology to solve problems. If you hire the wrong person, that doesn't have the right mentality and brings like this old bureaucratic way of thinking that some of these bigger AC companies have to a small agile startup, that's scary, right? So I can understand where it comes from. It's like, look, have you worked with a startup? Because if you have, you probably have seen how startups think, right? At least in my experience, there was a bit of that apprehension because they wanted that assurance.
Yeah, it's a complete culture clash, I could imagine. Construction, I always make this joke with people, like tech startup world, move fast and break things. Construction is like move slow and fix things.
That's it.
Anyway.
Definitely not, right? Not move fast. Like that's definitely not part of it.
So Converge, tell us what is Converge? What does it do?
So Converge is a startup here based in London. They've been in business for like 10 years, which, for startups, that's amazing, right?
Yeah.
So they've been in business for quite some time, always in the concrete space. Their flagship product, they started 10 years ago, is a maturity sensor, goes into concrete. And you go on our website. The thing that I really liked on our website when I was looking at Converge was strike formwork 30% faster using our smart sensors. And I thought, with my business hat on, I wish I had kind of a slogan for the digital business that I had at Pure Apple. That's such a tight, straight to the point type of thing, right? Any contractor understand the value proposition in 1 second.
So the value proposition was that they're able to determine whether the concrete has passed tests with 30% quicker.
Yeah, so it's actually measuring the exothermic reaction of the concrete, temperature of the concrete. From that, you can glean the concrete strength profile, right? And if you know that, you can potentially gain, you can strike formwork faster, right? So we
Got
have
it.
this
So it speeds
additional
up the
data point.
construction program
Yeah,
overall, yeah?
exactly.
Nice.
And then everybody knows you strike formwork faster on certain projects, your critical path goes down. And that's the real business case.
Got you.
Now that's their flagship product. That's our main business. We're in the business of concrete. But Converge is an amazing company because it is 50 people from all walks of life, cultures, and technical backgrounds working on the big problem, which is, how can we build more sustainably and effectively in the world, right? We have finite resources and we want to use technology to change that. And this is the first of many products. We have many products on our website now, all stemming from that first product, right? And, what they had told me when I came on is, we need you to help us build one for precast concrete in the supply chain logistics space. So it dovetails very nicely with our other products. We'll get into that. But basically, it was the idea is Converge will have a suite of solutions. We do. You go to our website that all go towards how can we build more sustainably and more profitably, if you will, in construction.
Got you. So you mentioned earlier that they were building a particular product, which was where you got involved. So could you tell us more? You've told me what this is, but I'll let you do the good explanation, or better explanation than I would.
I'll be interested to hear how you'd explain it. But
Do you want me to try? Let me try.
I was going to say, yeah.
Okay, let me try.
But I'm going to put you on the spot.
Then you can correct me, because I like to explain these things in a simple way. So if someone is ordering precast concrete panels, which are like big lengths of concrete, which act as like floor plates or superstructure for a large high-rise building, say, that are already formed, so they can come to site and be put into the building without having to cure and pour and whatnot the concrete on site. So technically, it's faster method of delivery, right? But the problem that you guys uncovered was that these precast panels are stored in a factory, and the factory or the distributor, perhaps, this is where you'll correct me, doesn't actually know where the panels are or in what order they're stacked and whatnot. So you've created a sensor to help them identify and improve their logistics, correct?
I would edit one big thing there. I think this is important. I would say they don't know where they are. That's a pretty harsh way to put it, right? The contractors across the board, manufacturers, so they have means and methods. But I think it's like anything else in construction. The means and methods they have to manage these complex problems are subject to error quite a bit. And that devalues their means and methods, their digital means and methods quite a bit. So I would say, yes, we are talking about big, huge chunks of buildings. We're talking about off-site manufacturing, big buzzword of the last however many years, 10 years.
100 years.
100 years. And we're talking about trying to make that industry profitable from end to end, from distributor, as you say, or manufacturer, all the way from the time we start making the unit, the module, all the way to the time it's installed. We're trying to take the current means and methods of how that's managed and make it 21st century. So, they have means and methods, but there is something to be desired in the supply chain. And that's what we've worked on from day one is different use cases along that journey. But it was always from the time that the concrete is poured at the factory to the time it's installed at the site, we're going to capture that journey. And we're going to tell you things that you need to know about that journey so that you can deliver your project more.
Got it. So the concrete has already been poured or produced. The panel's already been produced and is currently sitting in a warehouse ready to be distributed to its final place.
And I would say warehouse is a word I would change there too. So if anybody's ever, I've been to a lot of precast facilities. It's kind of like I'm aficionado of precast facilities.
Go for it.
So I'll tell you what they're like. It's a big, like air hanger kind of shed, right? Where they pour the concrete. Obviously us at Converge, we put sensors in there, right? We measure the temperature. We can tell you about the curing. And then our sensors can also follow the unit to what you called the warehouse, but really manifests itself as 5 or 6 football pitches full of building parts, stacks of huge concrete elements, thousands of them all at one place. that's the inception of our supply chains. Most facilities, whether they're creating precast, MEP, big volumetric modules, they'll have some aspect of the factory, but also the warehouse, or what they call in precast the yard, because it's not housed; it's just out in the elements, basically,
Waiting to go.
waiting to go, and then it's an inventory problem.
Okay, and so typically they're just sitting there, and the truck comes and it's like, right, I'm going to drop this to this site, and everyone's like, oh my God, where the hell is the panels that we need? Like, oh, there's one here, there's one there, there's one over here. Yeah, and that's a problem.
It is a problem, and I would say, if you didn't want to call me product manager, you could call me therapist. Because when you sit, you give that little, oh, where are they? Blah, blah, blah. What it really manifests itself is a lot of times is people blaming each other and yelling and saying the F word and things like that. So therapist being, I'm the PM, I work with the factory, I work with the site, and I can tell you how many times I can tell you, factory says, these guys called off the units incorrectly, right? They called off something that is wrong. And then I go to the site and they go, these guys sent the units, the wrong units in the wrong order. They were late, So everybody's just yelling at each other 24/7. Even when sometimes we work with vertically integrated companies where the transport, the factory, and the site are all owned by the same holding company, still this happens.
Wow. Interesting. So how did this problem come to life? Like, who discovered this? Was this before your time? Yeah, and why did this Converge need you to do what you do? And what do you do?
Yeah, so there's a lot in there. I would say, first of all, predates me, right? So obviously Converge has been in business for 10 years. And I would say the initial inception of the idea and the discovery of the idea really stems from, again, I said, Converge has amazing technical people and amazing customers who are forward-thinking, sort of that early adopters type of people, who are willing to invest their time and energy into the next thing beyond the temperature sensor, right? And that's where it started. So we had a couple of really good key partners before I joined. And this idea that tracking is what we wanted to do, tracking from the time the concrete is poured all the way to the end of the journey, but it was an idea, right? It was like, oh, we could do the golden thread, like Grenfell type of stuff, right? We could literally have it be fully digital golden thread precast. We could do a lot of other analytics, because once you know where something is, you know where something's been, you can do forward projections and predict the future, that type of thing, right? But it was all ideas. There wasn't one line of code written for the software. We didn't add anything when I joined. So that's why I think, we really hit it off, me and Converge, because we knew we had to build a product. We had customers who were key partners who said, we want to be the first users and we want to buy it and build it with you, basically, right? We want to give you access to our supply chain and just go for it, guys, So that's where I think my experience of being in different parts of the supply chain, really having been a good proxy for the customer, because I was working in the customer's office my entire life, helped, because, okay, the idea is the idea. What's the product going to be? And the product is two things. The product is, yeah, sure, there's gizmos and gadgets and the idea that we'll use them to be like crack. But then there's the business case of things and the reason behind why we build features, and really sussing out, why should you go and ask someone, okay, we're doing tracking, what features do you need? You're going to have a list from here, to next Tuesday of stuff that is meant to be built. And the way that, sort of I operated when I came in, I go, we're going to have to find very quickly the thing that's going to be highest impact, lowest effort. Because we're trying to boil the ocean if we're not careful. End-to-end journey tracking of a precast unit, all the complexity along the supply chain, we can't do it all at once. So, that was really, when it comes down to what I brought to the team is actually, it's a bunch of mathematicians, physicists, people who are software developers, firmware developers, just pure scientists on Converge. But there's actually a small minority of us who actually have had construction experience, and I'm one of the more experienced construction professionals on the team when I joined. So basically, that experience helped me as a product manager really suss out the discovery phase of this product, because we were working discovery and building at the same time. So, you're building and you're discovering, and you have to hurry that discovery up. And if I didn't know about construction, the discovery would have blown it, because it would have had to been educated on everything.
So you have to, so it's like a deep empathy for your customer, right? So what does the day-to-day look like, apart from spending however many hours traveling and sitting in the what do you call them, yards?
Yards. Yeah, I mean, I would say step number, like typical day, like I'll get up and the other day I was like hacking away at a new gizmo all day, just printed circuit boards, DeWalt tools. I'm here at home. I have a little workshop, gluing stuff together because the next day I have to bring that out to the field.
Oh, wow. You
That field,
actually be making the stuff too?
yeah. Now let's be clear here. It's Frankenstein stuff. It's early stage prototypes.
That's
So
cool. That's still cool.
it's so, I mean, honestly, I love to make stuff. I forgot how much I love to use my hands to make stuff. And in 10 years of working in engineering consultancy, you just don't use your hands. You make
Yeah.
what you make is non-physical. It's a PowerPoint deck, you know? So this is really fun. A lot of times, these things that I make, I need to take them to the middle of nowhere, Sweden, to deploy them and test them, right? So you build, you measure, you learn as the product cycle. If I build one day, I got to bring that to the airport the next day to get to Sweden. I inevitably get pulled over by security
I was
every
going to
time.
say,
Every time I get pulled over because all this stuff has batteries, printed circuit boards, wires.
What's the
They look
story?
like
What do you
bombs.
tell them? I swear I'm tracking precast concrete panels. I promise you.
Can I tell you this really funny story? They asked me, "Do you have any batteries in your luggage?" Right? And of course I have batteries. I just showed you, like, there's batteries in this. But I said, that's not what they mean. They mean like big batteries. So I said, no,
Yeah.
that was a mistake. So how they say, let's begin boarding. Everybody lines up in front of the gate. And then I heard my name being called. And I was like, this is
Oh.
going to be bad. So I went up to go, "Are you Emidio?" I'm like, "Yeah." They go, "Remember, everybody's standing there watching me get called out." They go, "There's something in your bag that shouldn't be there. Sit down here and don't touch your bag." They had my luggage there.
Oh.
25 kg of electronics and batteries and stuff.
Look, man.
So
I'm glad that I was not on that flight and they just see you open your suitcase. I'd be like, dude, we're not getting on this plane.
No, I mean, like it does look ridiculous, but I opened it up and I was like, guys, like this is all just off the shelf. Like this is no different than your iPhone, right? It's something electronic, right? And of course, you get past that. I've always gotten past security, even carrying the stuff that we have, little like gizmos and gadgets like this, because eventually it just looks different than an iPhone, but they realize it's easier. Right? Get on the plane, travel for about a day between rental cars, flight. Go to the middle of nowhere because precast facilities, sites are never in a cool place. They're always in a far-flung place. You spend the day getting there. You get out there and you have precast weather. What's precast weather? It's any type of blizzard, high rain, wind event. It's never a nice sunny day when I'm out in the precast facility. You're walking around freezing cold or very uncomfortable, and you take that gizmo and gadget and you deploy it tight. And it has to be deployed right because if it were to fall down, it would be a huge health safety incident. So these are the kind of things and then you've got to make your way back home, rinse and repeat, inform your team exactly how it went out there in the field. There's never a dull moment because something's always moving, something's always changing with your customers, with your team, and it's always fun.
So it really is like physical, hands-on testing and feedback, and then interpreting the feedback in a way that you determine whether there is a commercial use case, because ultimately we're in the game of business here and we have to make money.
That's it. And I think, it's the build, measure, learn cycle when you're first getting started. We have our first customers now. The hardware and the software work, but when push comes to shove, this is early days still. And where we want to get to is, not where we are now, right? But there's always an ability to improve. And one of the things that we hold very dear on my team is you got to go. Like I can't make that journey all the way to that facility and write up for you in a Miro board or a Notion board what it's like. Like I can't describe to you what a precast facility is like in words. Come feel it. I can't do that for a construction site. You have to go to a construction site to really understand how busy people are. Like the kind of context switching and distraction. And the fact is you can't talk to someone for 5 minutes who's the logistics manager on site without someone calling them or pinging them. And that'll get you some deep empathy as to this is a no bullshit industry. You have to deliver. This guy or gal has dedicated some 5 minutes to you. Give them something back and they'll give you another 5 minutes. Waste their time and they'll never talk to you again. And they give a lot of credit to people who are there with them because they're there. So why shouldn't we be there? That's where the problems are.
Yeah, totally understood. What's the so this precast DNA product?
Mhm.
Why do people pay?
Well, it depends on who we're talking to. So we work with sites, we work with factories. And I would tell you right now, when you talk, the value proposition for a factory will be completely different than the value proposition for a site, will be completely different for the value proposition for a integrated business that has factories, transport, and sites under their own roof.
Yeah.
And those people do exist, right? So people pay because, they're at this point, they're early adopters and they can see that they have real problems in delivering profitably, I would say, just across the board. That's what ties everybody together. Every business case that we built for the product comes down to, you find out that people know, hey, look, we're not going to be able to deliver this project if we just rely on clipboards and Excel sheets. So normally it's people who have the big, sticky, hairy problems like delivering HS2, for instance, or delivering a big, building in the center of London.
Yeah, so but the value you're adding is what? Are you saving them administration time? Are you reducing their costs somehow? Like, what's the value prop?
So this is where, if you look at, let's say we're talking to a site, right? So you go straight to a site, you say you have 1,000 precast units that are on the critical path to build the building, right? That's where you start, because you go, look, critical path is everything, this product, right, as project manager. And what you'll find very quickly is you go, well, the critical path runs through the tower crane to install those, right? And then you go, well, how often is the crane being used? Like if we want this project to be like Tesla, lickety split, 1, 2, 3, install unit 1, 2, 3. How often is your crane being used? And what you find very quickly using our system is cranes generally are sitting there 50% of the time, not being utilized. They're literally sat there, expensive asset. The proxy for progress on site is not moving. And then you go, oh crap, like that's not good. And then you can go, well, look, how many units does it lift an hour? Because you know what it should be. It should be 6 an hour. But if it's 3 an hour, you are slipping 3 units an hour on the program. And in our system is actually able to sit there and go, well, look, we're actually quantifying that, first of all, so you actually know, are you ahead of schedule or are you behind schedule? But also because we're tracking things all the way from their inception, we're going to be able to tell you, hey, look, here's the problems that are coming up that you don't even know about yet, right? Because actually, you're a day away from having these things delivered. And by the way, they've not been loaded on the trailer yet. So they're likely to be delayed to site in the first place, right?
I love how this stuff starts connecting together. Like, I'm thinking the value is in the side of the people like storing and distributing the materials, but actually it's kind of like across the whole spectrum because it's valuable for them, but also from a site side and utilization of things that cost a lot of money, like cranes, and also ensuring program continuity, and ultimately critical path, because like you say, these things are always on the critical path.
When you look at it, we've always said the whole supply chain is our goal, right? And we all live in service, no matter who we are in this industry, in terms of getting that critical path done for the customer. The asset needs to be completed. It runs through the critical path. But one of the things that we've really focused on this team is the manufacturers, because we actually want it to be everybody benefits. So what you said is right, and from our conversation before. We do want the manufacturers to get benefit. We don't want it just to be about sites. We want them to do this voluntarily. And this being, in order for my system to work, you being the manufacturer, need to attach this physically. That's our unique selling point, is we are with every one of your units everywhere all the time. It's not, we are there physically with your product. If our product doesn't provide value for precasters or offsite manufacturers, you know what they're going to do with this at the factory? Close this, throw it over the shoulder, right? And then we don't have a product. So we've taken it very seriously from day one that the manufacturers are key partners in this journey that are oftentimes overlooked and maybe let's say abused a bit, in the supply chain.
Yeah,
But
maybe.
they have a lot of really interesting problems to solve, and no one's solving them, and they want them solved. So we see it as both. We have to make the manufacturers happy and the site. If everybody's happy, we become the glue between those two people, improving supply chain logistics, and more importantly, making offsite manufacturing profitable, which it is not currently anywhere in the world. LinkedIn this morning, yet again, I see another LinkedIn post, another UK offsite manufacturer
Top hat.
going under. Yeah. Every week, it seems like we see one of those. But when you spend the time that I do at these facilities, I don't know, this might be a hot tip, but I don't think factory is the right word for a lot of these facilities. Factory kind of implies like Henry Ford, like, like there's a process to evolve.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there's no processes, but a customer recently told us, they go, don't call us a factory, call us a shed where we make things.
Whoa. Interesting.
Yeah, they said that themselves. And it's because there's a lot of improvements to be made. And we're at the beginning of that journey.
Interesting. Emidio, quick, maybe last question on this. I'm curious about the interface perhaps between the hardware side of what you guys are producing. So the what do you call them? Widgets?
Tags?
Sensors? Tags?
Tags.
There we go. And the software interface. Like, can you just talk about the software? The questions in my head are like, do you need software for it? Who uses that software? What value does the software provide, etc.?
Yeah, that's a good question. The interface is one thing that I really think is the transformational thing from the products that I'm used to using in construction. Scan this QR code, 1 second, tie it onto, again, precast units are big, 5 meter long, 6 meter long, table-sized thing. Attach it to it, walk away. That's it. Like, that's the interface with, you and the software initially. After that, these things, they emit signals, we receive them, and it's pretty hands-off after that point. Everything's talking to one another. That's the Internet of Things. Things talk to each other. And you as the user have to open up the software to see things like, is my production schedule on track, right? Because Converge knows where all the units are, and they know what the production schedule is. So they can tell us very quickly without us taking the 20-minute walk out there, are things okay, right?
Okay.
So this is different from any other digital AC tech I've ever used, because if you look at stuff like BIM, all the input to the system is manual clicking and clacking on keyboard from bunches and bunches of people. And you know how people are when it comes to clicking and clacking and putting stuff in correctly, right? So all the data that goes into that system is ripe for bias and error, right? But when you look at something like this, very easy input. Scan this, scan the QR code that you already have on the unit. A lot of these companies, they already have like a QR sticker. You've linked it, you've attached it, leave it to us. And us meaning not a human, but the radio frequency signals that are being used here. And at that point, the software basically does it all on its own. Like, you're just getting results at that point. You're not having to put energy into the system beyond what I've just described.
Yeah, fine. So you may like get a notification or something if your production is behind or if there's a flag, but realistically, you shouldn't actually need to use the software.
You should, like, for instance, we have customers who want to use the data about, like, let's say, the crane analytics on site, the delivery analytics as part of their progress meetings, right? So there's like dashboards and stuff
Yeah, got
that
it.
can help you. The notifications is really where we're working on. And I think the alchemy in construction tech that will put us on the map is what every other industry wants to do, predict the future, right? Because that's the key thing, is once you start having this critical mass of measuring all these things across the supply chain, you can start to use AI and machine learning to actually predict for a project manager, you got a problem coming down the pipe. Let's take action right now so that a problem doesn't arise in 3 days' time.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Okay, last one on product management, and then we'll go on to whether construction tech is physical. What is a couple product management hacks or maybe harsh lessons that you've learned over the few years?
Here's a thing I will tell you. If you want, like I told you before, you got to be able to take the gut punches. And in construction tech product management in particular, I've always said this. I lived in Hong Kong for 10 years nearly. There is no better person to test your ideas with than a Chinese contractor. A Chinese contractor will absolutely whale you with feedback in the face and tell you direct and negative feedback. He's not going to be worried about your feelings, right? And that's where really I learned a lot of my skills of, sort of being able to be out there and be like, look, I got to be able to listen rather than get defensive, right? Because I have been in rooms with people pitching, and then 5 minutes later after we leave, my boss showing me a text on the phone saying, please don't bring Emidio to future meetings because we didn't see any value in what he showed. Ouch. Ouch. And by the way, that continues to this day in the UK. I've had it happen this week. And it's not a Chinese contractor. It's a old Scottish man, who says, hey, look, I just don't see any value. And it's not personal. It's just business, right? They don't see any value. And if you get defensive, you will not ask the right questions that you can get the right information out of them, right? So this is, I think, one of the things is embrace the negative feedback that you're going to get. It might hurt, but if you check your ego and you check your feelings, you will get to the end of the end. So in the UK, at least, China, maybe it'll be a little bit different where you might just be told not to come back in the room. But here I've had it recently with our second customer. We got to the end of the pitch for at least the initial discussion. And he said to me, Emidio, listen, I'm just telling you, I don't see any value in what you're showing right now. Oh, there it is again.
Yeah.
But I'm tough. I'm not going to. But I gave him the second, and he said, but that's because maybe I don't understand it. Yes.
Yeah.
And that led to a trial, and that's now leading to our next steps with customers. So, sometimes you make your own luck. If I had gotten defensive in that very moment where he said, I don't think it, and well, that would have been bad. I would have maybe put him off. But instead I let him talk, and I was ready to ask questions about, well, what would make it? And I think that's the big thing. Get out there and embrace that you're going to get punched in the gut a lot with people who don't see value. Get to the bottom of what would be valuable.
I think we started this particular discussion talking about how like a pseudo therapy session led you down product management. And now it sounds to me like you need to create some kind of pseudo therapy sessions for product managers that are going through tough times and feedback from their customers.
And I think that's why we created Tech Built World, the meetup group that we co-host, and a couple other guys.
Yeah, let's go there. Tell us about Tech Built World.
Well, Tech Built World is just me, Arushan, Anthony, and Paul Woodley, all very passionate about Contech. All have worked in Contech in different stages of our career or are working in there. And we wanted to connect people in product and in design in the wicked problem that is the construction tech space. We've had 3 sessions so far. I've spoken at the second one, Anthony the first, and Iri from Autodesk on the third. They've all been energy, palpable in the air from people who, like you said, it's a little bit of a therapy session. You get some people who get a little bit emotional. They're like, I'm just so frustrated with people punching me in the gut and saying there's no value in everything that I do, and it's a great community. So we've had 3 sessions, and the one that I spoke at went very well. I was very happy about the turnout of all of them, and I'm very happy that it seems like London is a great place. I know very well for this type of thing.
Yeah, I see the community in London starting to grow. I promise you I will come to one day. But as I started to you off air before we started doing this, when you got kids, like,
yeah,
these things become like a currency, right? You have to spend them wisely.
Yeah. We were joking the other day because I was like, yeah, this might be the last one I joined for a while.
Yeah, man. Yeah, sadly, yes. But this is life. I don't really have any words of encouragement. I would just say it gets easier. Anyway, could you just tell us briefly, like we have 10 minutes or so. So I think you sent us a YouTube video, which we will link here. And I believe this is you talking at one of your events, talking about physical solutions for physical problems. So what is your thoughts on the limitations of software addressing physical nature of construction?
Well, when you look at that video, and we get into it in a lot of detail, but when it boils down to it, I told you on this call, this podcast so far, my experience has been very much on the design side for the majority of my career. And the majority of problems that I've been solving have been at a computer screen, not on the coal face in construction, right? And construction is at its very core a physical problem. Like at some point, something physical has to be built. And when you look at how digital has manifested itself in construction, I think of it very much like Facebook, right? Think of it like Facebook. What did Facebook want to do? Connect people with one another, right? Facebook or Twitter, right? They achieved that. They created this big bucket called Facebook that anybody could be accessible to and dump information into and to connect with one another. We've also seen how it can be a bad thing as well, where the fidelity of the information that goes into that bucket can cause, if it's negative, if it's low fidelity or fake in general, cause really bad outcomes in the world. So if you take that same principle and you look at anything that has been happening in construction in my career timeline, right? Take the label off of it. Forget if it's, I'm not going to name any companies, right? Any of the companies, rip off the label and you will see that same paradigm. Box O information that anybody could chuck information into. And that's part of the issue, is because when all of the information that is supposed to represent reality comes from people clicking and clacking on the keyboard, you're going to have a problem very quickly, especially in an industry that's so complicated like construction that you don't even have to be a bad actor to put in bad information. You just have to be a misinformed actor. And before you know it, it's just like Facebook. All of a sudden it becomes this echo chamber of things that are not real. So I think that's the big difference between digital only solutions in a physical world and a physical solution is digital only solutions have that huge openness and proneness to fake data permeating. And that makes it such that the data that's inside of those things that are supposed to represent reality start not to be. And then they become a distraction.
Yeah, okay, nice. So on the flip side, I suppose relating this back to Converge is you are getting physical, like because what you're tracking is physical. The data is what it is, right? It doesn't rely on a misinterpretation or perhaps slip of the finger on a keyboard or something like that, which may lead to inaccurate outcomes, huh?
It's exactly that. We have on our team the laws of precast DNA, the literal like laws of physics type of thing. And it's one of those things like this thing emits a signal every second, just into the universe. There is a physical digital interface called the radio frequency signal. If I pick that signal up from a receiver that's on a construction site, the end, it arrived. Like that didn't happen because someone typed it in and was lying. Like there is no misinterpretation of that. And we don't have a lot of that in construction, where something that's in the computer, you could look at it and go, that's a bona fide fact of life that this happened, because it always goes through a human filter. And one of the biggest lessons I ever had, you become, I'm a digital guy, BIM, BIM, BIM. I went to, pitch BIM to an OG Chinese contractor. And said to me, goes, look, how do I know when I look at this for this, 25 billion Hong Kong dollar project? How do I know that it's real? How do I look at this nice, colorful 3D model? Because I've had many years of experience where that thing is BS compared to what's actually happening on site. And that's because it all goes through a human filter. And just the latency of humans alone makes it out of date, let alone the biases and clown town stuff that can happen along the way. Yeah, that was a great moment. Yeah, how do I trust this? Well, if it came because of little machines that are doing it, I trust it a lot more than humans. I think for certain things, machines are better. And for manual input versus machine input, that's really what you're talking about with physical solutions for physical problems.
Interesting. But I guess it's like not entirely possible at this stage anyway, because technology is not there at the moment for it not to have a human in the loop in some respect.
And by all means, I'm not saying we get rid of humans, right? But for when it comes to things like tracking, like what we do, these are the kind of things where it's like that can be automated. That has been automated in other industries, and it certainly can be. And if we do it, now it's that, you now can have that high fidelity inventory management system. You can now have that high fidelity delivery system. And if you think about it, in the limit, you look at a lot of what happens on sites, planes and stuff like that. A lot of that comes down to people just saying what happened, but not actually having any real proof, right? So this starts to become something that actually says, look, let's not fight, guys. This is a fact of life. The load showed up late on site. There's no politics about this. It's a fact. It's been registered. it's physics, right? Let's just solve the problem rather than try and hide behind this cloud of unknown that happens because we have these bad data systems that are subjective in many ways because of the way that the data gets into them.
Okay, interesting. What I already asked you about the physical solutions you're excited about, but you mentioned something along the lines of performance contracts. Want to talk about that?
Well, so this is the thing. So for that Tech Built World thing, I was like sitting there, I was making this deck. I'm like, okay, how do I, and I was trying to think, what are the really downsides of what we do as an industry? If you watch that video, what you see is this industry, some people forget, is risk for money. That's all it is. I did an extension on my house here in London. I wrote up a contract and I said, in that contract, Mr. Contractor, you deal with this risk. I'll give you money for this asset, right? And I think Contech, as it's manifested itself, or AEC Tech, always manifests itself, it seems, with a big disclaimer that breaks the fundamental rules of the industry, which is, look, in this industry, you're supposed to take on some risk if you want some money, full stop. But then you look at some of these very prevalent softwares and you go to their T's and C's, and that's in my presentation. It's just like, we take no liability. You assume all liability and risk. Like it's completely unempathetic to the way that the industry works. So, but the reason for that very clearly is when you create a product that can be misused, right? And you can't guarantee the fidelity of the information inside the BIM model. Of course, Autodesk's not going to put that clause on there, right? Because I can't be liable for the output of my software when the input is subject to your discretion, right? Simple as that. But when you start to get, I mean, and this is super theoretical right now, but when you start to see things where it's like, look, the example I gave before, if I see a signal as Converge that came from this site at this time, we could put money on that if we wanted to. We know for a fact that happened. There's no subjectivity anymore. It's an objective thing. And maybe now you have the basis of forming performance-based contracts, right? These type of things where you take the subjectivity out of it, where you increase the fidelity of the measurements because they don't go through a human filter. I think there is a very interesting chat to be had with someone who's more of a blockchain person or a high-ranking project director, how you could make an equitable agreement. Because when you look at it, contractors, cash flow is king. And what we do as Contech people right now, or AEC Tech people, is we ask for money up front and we take no risk. It's like the opposite of what our customers want. They want cash positive solutions that you take some skin in the game. But as tech people, we've yet to find a way to put skin in the game scalably.
Yeah, funny. I can draw some parallels here, and this happens even in the consultant world, right? So realistically, only one person ever takes risk on a project, and that is the contractor. Architects, structural engineers, project managers, whatnot, they are taking an element of risk, but the impact of them making a mistake versus the impact of a contractor making a mistake are like quite at different ends of the spectrum. I would also say that professional services, like the consultants, are backed up by PI insurance. So if something goes wrong, like it doesn't matter, right? They're not incentivized to get it right. So I think this is probably perhaps more of an industry problem than just a software vendor problem. But I can see what you're saying. And I have deep empathy and in fact, deep sympathy for contractors because they'll get delivered. I was having a chat with a project manager of a huge publicly traded company, and he's like, we're running into this problem where stage 4 drawings, so drawings that are meant to be, or stage 5 drawings that are meant to be for construction, just cannot be built. It's like, it makes sense. I see it on my projects as well. And I don't know, probably a major culture issue. And is it something that can be solved? I don't know.
Well, and this is maybe one thing that I'm glad came up. The word I use a lot is systemic. In that presentation, you call it an industry problem. I say it's the systemic way that we are set up as an industry that drives that, hey, look, the contractor is the one who basically gets a big reward, but also takes on a huge risk. My house here in London, for those of you who are listening not from London, it's very popular in London to make a house extension, which is 3 walls and a roof attached parasitically to your house. Like it's 3 walls and a roof. It is not the most complex thing in the world to do. But once you break ground on this project here, you never know what you're going to find. And that's the thing is, who's going to take that risk when you uncover that it's bad soil? Who's going to take that risk when you get the sort of pissy buildings department regulator coming out and saying you need a new fire door here, right? Where does this come from? Like this is all stuff that equates to risk, and who's going to pay for it? And I think we as contact people have to realize these are the dynamics that the industry is. You're not going to change that. Like that's been hundreds of years in the making for quite some time. But what we can do is have empathy for that and realize that the mecca, at least in my opinion, would be to show up with something that is cost positive or like cash positive for our contractors, because they work off a very tight margin and cash flow is king. And then as well, take some risk. Allow for yourself to do something that you work with them.
100%. I think the key thing is keep having these conversations, have people like you who are passionate about solving these problems and coming up with, I'll call them radical ideas.
Like I said, that's in the video, and I told people like, look, this is super an idea. It's not what we're doing at Converge, just to be clear.
Like we need these we need that kind of thought leadership in this space, and I'm grateful. And I think the industry is lucky to have people like you in it. Emidio, could you tell people where they could find out more about you?
Yeah, so you can hit me up on LinkedIn, Emidio Piermarini. You can also, I have a YouTube channel, The Computational Engineer. You can hit that like and subscribe button. And you can hit us up on Tech Built World Meetup Group. If you're in London, it's an in-person only group. And if you follow The Computational Engineer on YouTube, I think that's where we're going to start putting the videos of all the sessions. And obviously, if you're in London and you ever want to talk, like me and you just did, Owen, always open for a little pint and talking construction nerds.
Awesome. Emidio, thank you so much.
Thanks, Owen. I'm really glad. First time on this show. One of my favorite podcasts. So I'm glad to have been part of it now.
It means a lot. Thank you, dude.